welcome to the CHRISTWVRKS Podcast. Today we've got Ian Nix of the band Worm. Are you guys calling it Worm or is it WVRM?
It's Worm.
Worm.
None of that weird complication. Just
like
like the little critter.
Yeah. Like, well, it's the same as CHRISTWVRKS, right? It's literally from you guys that I got that idea for that name. So yeah, I've got you to thank for that. So where is it that you live?
I live in Greenville, South Carolina. It's a little town on the sort of the tip of the state there in the American South, right next to the mountains, next to the Appalachian Mountains. It's called the Foothills.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like right at the beginning of it. I just want to jump straight in and so obviously during this sort of thing, the COVID thing that's happening now, America, there's a lot of shit going down in the world, but particularly in America. And like the first thing that really like caught my eye with what the fuck is going on is like that protest outside a hospital, which was the those Proud Boy guys, and there were protests. So like, can you because I wanted to ask you about this, so I've not looked into it too much because I actually wanted to talk to you about it so I could get the opinion of someone that actually lives there, you know? So can you explain what that was?
Well, what it is I'll say 100% it's led by like business owners, all the whole Trump, side of things. Everybody, they're not just carrying around American flags and shit or those, don't tread on me snake flags, like they got Trump 2020 flags. They're all wearing, Make America Great Again hats. It's definitely from the right. I've seen a couple of like leftists like supported. Oh well, any sort of street revolt is acceptable in America, but I don't know. That's like too much wishful thinking. Like,
yeah. So, but I mean, like, what was it that actually happened? It was like there was guys basically barricading a hospital to stop people getting in.
So there's been like for a couple weeks now, there's been a lot of like Facebook groups called like Reopen This State. There's one for South Carolina. I was even on it and like just looking through what these people are saying and shit, and like I don't know. Fucking with them.
Logic. Yeah, can you explain like the logic behind that? Because that sort of rhetoric almost doesn't exist in the UK. Like people, like no one is saying stuff like that, really.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's the whole thing behind it. It started with Michigan. They did this thing called what they called Operation Gridlock, which a bunch of them, I don't know, like 50 of them got in their cars and just blocked this one section of the street that's like right in front of the state house. But there's a hospital there too, and they were blocking the hospital the whole time. There was like doctors and nurses and people coming out saying, "Hey, we got to move ambulances through here. Like this is dangerous. What you're doing right now. Not just from this, coronavirus shit, but like regular folks, people who are getting in car accidents and shit. Like, you're
it doesn't discriminate. Yeah.
But there was dudes with fucking guns and shit on the on the state house steps, which isn't that strange. I mean, they kind of do this every once in a while. Like even before this, they were in, I don't know, I think it was like Kentucky state legislature walking around inside of the government building with rifles. Some of them even wearing balaclavas and shit, like inside of the building. So I mean, this isn't that strange for them. They look for any opportunity to walk around with guns and beat and act like, fucking
LARPing army, right?
Or some shit. But yeah, that's what it was. And then a few other states have been doing it too. Yesterday there was Ohio. They were trying to do that gridlock thing where they block the street, and literally like nurses like in scrubs and everything were like blocking them so they couldn't get like in front of like the ambulance pass and shit. And again, this is the revolt of the business owners. This is the petty bourgeois revolt right now. These are all all their rhetoric is old school, 1776, fucking George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin shit. That's all their quotes that they're holding up. Give me liberty or give me death, all that bullshit. This is totally, a rightist, propped up by the business class sort of revolt. This is not a working class movement. Though they claim it's, for the workers, they want to reopen, get people working again, which that rhetoric on its face is acceptable. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You don't want to close everything down because we're heading towards a fucking depression if we aren't even in it, something they're saying that would be worse than the Great Depression, but it seems to me like this is not so much. This is definitely not for the workers. It's for the profits of the business class, and it's for their comfort. They're upset they can't go to the salon right now. All the Karens are in revolt because they can't.
Yeah, I saw that I need a haircut. That's like a slogan now.
But goddamn, we gotta, if there's a chance this thing could spike, I want, I don't want to be in a depression as much as anybody, but I also don't want my, fucking everyone's grandma to die either. I don't know. Some of them are saying, well, this is an acceptable sacrifice, for the economy. I'm like, God damn, y'all are so cucked by fucking Wall Street.
Yeah.
You would just bend over and spread for them any day now. It's embarrassing, man.
But that's their version of farsightedness is completely weighted towards conservative farsightedness is oh no, but we need to protect the economy, and we're and left-wing people would be no, we need to protect people first, right?
I mean, the ones on the front lines, the ones that not necessarily in the most danger, the majority of the workforce, the majority of people out of a job right now are young people with generally stronger immune systems. It's not if we go back out into the workforce, we may get sick, but we're probably not going to die or go to the hospital. But, we could get people around us sick that could die, that could go to the hospital. And that's, that's scary. I've seen videos of dudes crying, dudes from Alabama, good old boys crying oh, they're taking my dad off the respirator, pulling the plug, and this dude's feels like he accidentally killed his own dad. It's you don't want to fucking live with that, man. We definitely need to be as safe as we can about this, and we could be, honestly, and we could be fine. But what we've learned from this is that the American system is so fragile that even though it's so large and powerful with all this wealth and bullshit, you unplug it, from something like this, and it falls apart. There's no contingency plan. They had to give everybody money and shit, but it's nowhere near enough. They set up a loan fund that was something like $350 billion, somewhere around there, to loan out to businesses that were affected. The shutdown, it ran out of money, and it ran out of money, and there's still businesses that have gotten no help, and there's a pretty big chance that a lot of places are going to be shut down, are just going to close forever after this. Just America was not ready, was not prepared in any way, and this really revealed the cracks in the whole thing, how it's not ready for any kind of crisis. But it could be, and the reason it's not is because we have a parasitic ruling class that is propped up by a constantly working class that is passive, subordinate, and during a crisis could fall at any minute with no help, and the rich and the powerful can just run away to their islands, and they're lock themselves up in their homes in New Zealand and fucking just escape it, and where the poor and the workers just die off. I mean, it's just they had no fucking plan, even though they could have. We have all this wealth. We could have locked down and kept everything good, but we have this parasitic ruling class that their very existence keeps us from being prepared for a crisis like this. And I can only imagine what would happen in a worse crisis. That's really what it all comes from. I mean, even the right wingers, even the small business owners who are trying to revolt right now and shit, like, even they wouldn't be hurt as bad. Even they would be doing better if it wasn't for this ultra wealthy, ruling class that controls everything, that has every politician in their pocket, has the whole system under its boot. That's the thing. And I think that at the very least, that should show, this whole situation should show us that aspect of reality a little more. It should be a little, at least.
Yeah, I think that's
than it was.
Yeah, it's like it's under suspicion for the last 10 years or whatever, sort of knowledge of like the actual underpinning system, and people's understanding of that has been growing
ever
for the
since
last
like
10 years.
Occupy Wall Street,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
last recession, 2008, the last time that shit happened, like, this rhetoric built around, the 1% versus the 99%, like that, all that, that was coming up. I mean, that, like, this should bring that out to the surface even more than it was.
Yeah, it's undeniable now.
Right, of course. And then, the age-old question, what is to be done?
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask you. Like, and I mean, ultimately, like, I'm by no means like a Marxist or anything, but the one main thing that I do agree with that he said that I agree with is that, like, there can be no peaceful revolution, and to me, ultimately, the only way that anything is ever going to happen is violently, because if anything else that we do, the people in charge just sit back and they go like, right, are you guys done now? Yeah, cool, right. You've said your piece. I'm gonna fucking ignore you now, and now I'm gonna get on with business as usual.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is a state of war. We accept war, as an inevitable part of civilization. We're apparently okay with war, in the Middle East. We're apparently okay with bombing Syria and Libya, and we're okay with war in the third world. We accept it. But there are different kinds of war. The war that we're in with the ruling class is a systematic war. They can deny workers and poor folks access to health care, which kills hundreds of thousands, if not millions, a year. That's violence. Keeping working class poor people without access to healthy food, with everything around you, you're working 40, 50 hours a week or more. You only have time to eat like fast food. Everything around you.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest takeaways from visiting America, is that it's fucking impossible to eat like good food, because and you go to like these huge supermarkets, and the bit with actual food in it, like that's like like if you want carrots or something, right? That bit that's got carrots and potatoes and that is just like tiny, and they like hide it, and it's like, if you want to make food from scratch in America, it's like you really have to work for it. So why would you? They
wanted you to think that vegetables are some fucking boutique thing.
Yeah, it's mental. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, the UK is not really like that, and it's only in like the kind of worst parts of London and stuff that it's more similar to the way that it is in America everywhere. which is frightening to me. You know.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it's disgusting. And is that not violence? Like the ruling class ruling over a society that keeps you working your ass off for less and less. You're doing worse than your parents. They're doing worse than their parents. Like everybody is doing worse generationally, making less money, but working more, and productivity is always going up. Yet life seems to be going down.
Misery is accepted.
Keeps you unhealthy.
Yeah.
Takes your time away from your friends and family and yourself, your own self, your own growth. And puts you in a fucking early grave. Is that not violence?
Yeah,
is that not an act of war against a population? It's like we don't have power and wealth. We don't have the kind of power to enact a peaceful, systematic, violent attack against the ruling class. We cannot attack them the way they attack us. The only choices we have are our bodies. We have to use physical coercion, physical violence. But the problem with that is they'll, with their media, with their bought and sold media that they own all over the world, they of course they'll push the narrative. Oh my God, these rioters! Can you believe they're so violent? How evil and immoral is this physical violence? How dare they threaten us? How dare they do this in society? Oh, they're barbarian savages. They push that on you. They make you feel like immoral and terrible for being so angry, righteously angry, in order to justify physical combat against them, or just justify like being against that. They push it that you're a bad person because, or you have some kind of insane violent fantasy to destroy the world. Everyone that wants to take down the ruling class is like a little Hitler or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like they'll push that narrative because their violence can be masked through the system, where our violence has to be outside of the system, attacking it and smashing it from the outside. An actual a physical war.
That's the Zizek, the philosopher Zizek.
I was just watching one of his videos this morning.
Yeah. Like my favorite thing that he said was when he was getting ostracized for being in support of revolutionary violence, and people were like, "No, you should be a pacifist," and he was like, "How much violence do you think is required to keep things the way they are now?" And when you think about, like the way that police, ultimately, the police, even at their best, the police, they don't want to hurt you, but they will, like if they have to. And that's ultimately everything. It comes down to, like, they are going to use violence to get their way.
It ultimately comes down to keeping the classes separate. It's all about keeping the class system.
That's one of the interesting thing for America is like British people, we think traditionally that we have a class system, and it kind of doesn't really exist in America. But you're kind of talking like very much in the way that we talk about our class system. So do you think you guys do have that?
It is no different than what's been going on in the UK system and all that. It's the exact same. It's all passed down from fucking England. All of our values come from Europe. Like everything about this government was those ideas were started in Europe basically. So it's like it's the same.
Everyone came over. And then we're like, right, well, let's make our own version of it here. Yeah.
Right. It's no fucking different. It's really not. And they push the narrative that it's somehow, you can be a worker. They call it the American dream, right? Like you can be a worker, have a working class job, but have a like middle class lifestyle because America's so great and they can, give their workers more money without a union and the bosses are good.
The anti-union rhetoric is just like so funny. Like to me, like it's like it's so thinly veiled you know, what they're trying, you know, and it's like, how does anyone fall for that? You know, like how, yeah.
In America, like, they push the narrative that, oh, everyone is going to be a business owner. Everyone's going to be a member of this ruling class, you know. But it's not possible. And somehow our parents and grandparents were fucking stupid enough to fall for it, you know, which we cannot let the generations before us off the hook. We have to be like, you people are weak, stupid, dipshits. You could have had a revolution in your time, but you fucked it up. You were lazy pieces of parasitic fucking shit.
Yeah, they weren't so nearly as oppressed and under a vice-like grip in the way that it is now, and surveillance wasn't what it is now, and it's so much harder to start anything now. There's old like the Scottish version of the IRA is a group called Shale McGale, and they I actually spoke to one of their members a while ago. You know, it doesn't exist now. Yeah. I was speaking to him about whether, you know, it would get back together, you know, considering the current situation between Scotland and England, and he was like, no, you couldn't do something like that now because of the surveillance and stuff. It just like it would be over before it started.
Right. There's only one way to pull that kind of stuff off. You have to form multifaceted coalitions, like with the government and the street, so to speak. So you have to try to get through this fucking, you know, sort of bourgeois electoral system. You have to have people backing you in the government, as well as people on the street that are doing, you know, mutual aid, community policing, try to go into communities and get the people to be their own sort of police force and kick out the state police, like slowly inch them out, you know.
So like an all-out kind of like overnight.
Yeah, you have to a competing power structure, a competing infrastructure, which I do personally. I believe would include some sort of defense mechanism, some sort of military defense force.
That's why I always say the battle between the right and the left is a non-starter, because the right have got all the guns, and who the fuck are you gonna? Who's gonna win? It's like, you know, is like a fucking jacked up redneck on steroids with a huge armory of guns and bunkers, or some soy latte drinking hipster, right? You know,
right, exactly. That's definitely a pretty difficult task. For the most part, though, the majority of the working class, when I say like working class, I mean like the majority of the people that would make good, you know, revolutionaries, like good soldiers on the street, are the exact opposite of the people with all the guns. And by that I mean like the people with all the guns aren't even like, those aren't the people. Those are like literally like bored lower middle class dudes. Like those are not like they can afford all those guns, but they're not real, like they have no real dog in that fight. If something broke out and they did face like even a smaller like force of dedicated like revolutionaries with real skin in the game, they would fucking lose. Like even with all their guns and all their fucking bullshit, because they're a bunch of old men. Like that's the thing, that shit is dying. Like the militia movement in America is made up mostly of old people. The young people, there are some young people, and you should be very afraid of those types. They're, you know, fucking basically fascists with access to assault rifles. But like the young working class coming up has the potential to be militant for the right reasons. And it's just, you know, if we can get them militant for the right reasons, they're going to outnumber and be stronger. And
I mean, from my thinking about it, the main problem is the organization element of it, because it's something that needs to be very heavily organized, because what you're fighting against is very heavily organized, and that level of organization requires someone like much smarter than you and me, right? And Yeah.
Well, not so much someone much smarter than you and I, but a large number of people all putting their minds together.
Yeah, and with the same goal,
Yeah.
and that's what the left has a problem with is actually simultaneously defining a singular goal, whereas that's why the right wing, that's what they're really good at, is deciding on a goal and also having a proper hierarchy and adhering to that, because their whole thing is like based around those things.
Right.
Whereas the left at the moment is so dissonant and has so many conflicting ideas, it's very hard to kind of unify it. That was another thing that I wanted to ask you about. Is like, what is it about America, sort of going back to like these like sort of like COVID protests? What is it about America, do you think, creates these like utterly mental responses to almost anything? Like I see, like everyone, there's memes all over the internet about how every time a big like world issue happens in America, or in the world, everyone looks to America and goes, let's just see what crazy shit these guys do next. Like,
it's embarrassing.
Yeah. What is it about America that makes that happen, in your opinion?
Literally zero infrastructure for that kind of stuff. No education. We have no political education whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like in public schools, they do not teach you about labor history. They don't teach you about, these kids, working class kids going to public state-run schools, learn about the fucking Rockefellers and learn about oil giants and learn about, all the rich parasites of the industrial revolution.
Drive aspiration that they'll never achieve.
Right. So when you're taught all that bullshit in school, it's a part of the ideology. They're just trying to regenerate the ideology. That's the only goal.
Yeah,
of public
perpetuate.
schooling.
Yeah.
That's the only goal of American colleges. It is not to educate. It is not to bring the next generation into the, that's bullshit. It's propaganda. It's nothing more than set up by the ruling class to regenerate the ideology that keeps them in power. That's it.
But then the right wing would say that the universities...
They fall for it.
No, but then the right wing would say that the universities are frighteningly left wing. And that's what Jordan Peterson is always going on about, is how, like all the American universities, or at least the upper echelon of the American universities, is overwhelmingly like, was it Marxist, postmodernist,
not left wing. They still uphold capitalism. They still uphold the system. They may be like more friendly to gay people now, a little less racist, but then that's how pathetic the right is. Like, they're less racist and less homophobic. Oh my God, there must be insane communists. Like,
yeah. But then that's also another American thing, though, is that it's very like, if you're not with us, you're the opposite end of the spectrum, because the American left can be very like that as well, where it's like, if you're not, if you say anything that's not like within the sort of realm of leftist politics, then you're a Nazi, right? That's also a problem.
That's kind of changing, I think, a little bit over It's a recent change within the last even year, maybe. Like, it's like the whole like I don't know. I mean, you'll find petty fights among the left. Like who which fucking Marxist revolutionary was correct in their writing and all that shit. Who fucking cares? Like,
it's our day, right?
Like, a lot of them are these fucking college kids that have lived in this sort of privileged bubble, and they can't see. It's just easier for them to debate theory than to even look at reality.
Well, it's because they've not lived in reality, right?
Right. We need to give. I mean, I want to give Marxism to the motherfucker that works at McDonald's, like the workers, the fucking regular people, the people who would become your fucking revolutionary soldiers, the poor kids in the streets, like who either go work at Burger King or pick up a gun and drugs and start gangbanging, those are the people you need to fucking reach. Fuck colleges. fuck this bullshit. You need to be on the streets, reaching those kids, not and not taking the guns out of their hands. By the way, putting the guns in their hands and telling them the ruling class is your enemy. Go after them. Like they need to be taught to be soldiers, working class soldiers who fight for their class. Like that's the only way that we're gonna change anything, especially in America. The rhetoric has to change. It has to move away from this fucking George Washington, fucking just, slave owner rhetoric bullshit and move towards, a real, working class culture, a proud culture that wants to.
Proud boy culture.
Yes. I think maybe we'll get there. There's different things, liberalism fucks it up. That's what, all this ultra PC, call out culture shit, like it has its value in some ways. I mean, yeah, should we kick all the Nazis off the internet? Yes. Should we kick them should we kick their souls out of their bodies with guns? Yes, I think that too. But, the whole, like, policing language and jokes and shit, it's gone too far. It alienates people. And, again, that's not the left. That's liberals,
See, that's a distinction. That's also a distinction which I was struggling with for a while as well. And it's sort of like it's come more prominent, that level of understanding between those two things,
Right. There needs to be a separation. There needs to be a defined line between what is a liberal and what is a leftist. There's not the same thing.
And then neoliberals are quite different as well. And
neoliberals are basically Satan incarnate.
Yeah,
the devil on earth.
Well, that's there's a lot of like Trump supporting neoliberals, right? Yeah. So that's like that's the thing about American politics. It's like it's so much more complicated than British politics, because I think British politics does kind of it pretty strictly follows the the left, right, and center, and center left and center right, kind of like that, but I think there's a lot of like really conflicting terms and stuff in American politics. Well, and then you have race, which much more complicates it as well.
It becomes so convoluted in this two-party system.
That's the thing. It feels like for like looking out is like, okay, they only have like two parties, so it must be really simple, but it's like it's so much.
Because it's a contradiction, right? American hegemony is all about defining everything in black and white terms.
Binary.
Superman, Zod, Batman versus Joker. That's the whole fucking culture. And you try to put something like that into politics, that does not fucking work, because it's a fantasy. Nothing is black and white, so you cannot align society. You cannot divvy up society with the same sort of like fantasy rhetoric. It causes a psychosis. It drives people insane. I mean, that's why America is the way it is. It's full of insane people. Like, again, our ruling class, teaches us, puts us in these public schools to regenerate the ideology, and they put that sort of good versus evil in your head. They make you pick a side, and it's like a game. It's like you're in a fucking video game, and that's the essence of fucking neoliberalism right there. Like, treat every human being like an infant, give them toys and candy, in exchange for their full subordination and passivity, and then you can plunder the whole earth under that and force them to work for you for nothing. I mean, it's this whole thing. Americans just do not have a proper historical or political education, and that's why we can't handle a political system that does have a more defined idea of what is a liberal, a conservative, a socialist, a fascist, any of that. Like, there's just none of that. Like, you talk to your typical American on the street, that they will not be able to define any sort of political anything. They would not know what you're talking about. Like, and that's one thing. I mean, the ruling class is so afraid of even handing down that sort of like education, like even just defining these things, defining the political lines in society. Even that is too much for them, because they're so afraid that if the people understand the position that they're really in, that they're going to rebel against them.
Yeah.
So they won't even give you the definitions, in school. They won't even tell you what's going on. They just push this fucking Batman, Joker, Superman's. They pass this, I say it a lot. Every fucking millennial cop thinks he's the fucking Punisher.
Yeah.
Every fucking, there are people in America that walk around dressed like superheroes. They made up their own superhero persona, and they go and they fucking do extra cop shit. Shit that the cops can't get to quick enough. They go and do it, and they cause a lot of fucking trouble doing it. They're a bunch of fucking delusional, insane jerk-offs.
Yeah.
Like, they'll even go as far as they'll go to protests like May Day and shit, dressed up like Batman, like, and they'll like use violence against revolting workers, and they're fascists, they're black shirts, but
because that's the thing, is like, especially Batman particularly.
Yeah, Batman's like, a fascist. I mean, a billionaire beating up poor people for to like, come on, what is that? But and it's a really sad, pathetic, embarrassing state of things. Today's brown shirts, today's Nazis, today's fascists think they're fucking Batman. They think they're like the Punisher. They think they're superheroes. They think they're in a comic book.
But it's also because they're But that then they're in modern times, how like extreme right wing rhetoric has become an issue of freedom of speech, rather than when I was growing up. I think you're about the same age as me. Like, when we were growing up, left wing rhetoric was the issue of freedom of speech, and now it's much more like there's this thing of like, far right American people being like, oh, I'm the one telling it like it is, and like, they don't, like the system doesn't want me to be able to say, all this like horrible racist shit, right?
Yeah.
And so they think they actually have this kind of like freedom fighter mindset, and this vitriolic, like, like,
where's it getting them? Where is there's no revolution in any of their rhetoric.
Yeah, because they're upholding the status quo, really.
Exactly.
They're fighting for their right to uphold the status quo. Yeah.
But that's passed down to them. I mean, the whole QAnon thing, all these conspiracies. I mean, we have, there's reasonable evidence, I would say, to believe that a lot of this shit is implanted by fucking nefarious, types like in the CIA, the FBI. Like, they create psyops. All they have to do is create a Facebook page that says Trump 2020, how Hillary's part of a secret, underground cabal that's eating children, and like, and they give that to the masses. They give that to the angry masses instead of actual, revolutionary rhetoric, instead of actual truth. Instead of saying there's a parasitic ruling class, that's why everything is so fucked. That's why your life is fucked, because there's all these people that are taking, a million times more than they could ever need. And that is affecting the world very, very negatively. But they don't, what if everybody thought that? Well, how would it be? Like, we'd be hanging these motherfuckers in the streets. They're just trying to preserve their own life, right? Like,
yeah, and it's like, how can you even blame them? They're only doing what's available to them. right? They're only just it's like, well, no one's stopping me from doing all this horrible, evil shit, and it's going to benefit me to do it, so why the fuck not, right? It's like, how can you even blame them? Just because no one's telling them no,
Yeah.
So like, what do you expect is going to happen, right? So like, I mean, okay, so like to try and move it slightly into music, because we've just been talking about
Hey,
it.
1 second. I've actually been taking a shit this whole time.
Really?
Yeah. And I need to plug my phone in. Just give me 1 moment. Okay, cool?
Yeah.
All right. Hold on, let me...
A nice edit. So yeah, like my impression of your lyrics and stuff is that a lot of it is more like sort of mental health and personal based. Like, are you talking about politics stuff in your lyrics as well, or?
Yeah, I kind of have a problem with things that are like a little too straightforward political. I kind of like a poetic edge in my writing, like like I like talking about real shit. Like, I mean, you kind of have to talk about political. I mean, everything's political, really.
It's like the reason you're depressed. A lot of it can be political, right?
Right. Yeah, that it all goes back to that same sort of place. I kind of like I don't know. For me personally, I feel like it's sort of better coming from a place of like personal, emotional experience. So I think people relate more to emotions than like straight up facts. Like, I did a lot of work on the Bernie Sanders campaign. Like, knocked a lot of doors, talked to a lot of people, and it was always. I mean, like nobody wants you to just spit facts in their face. Like nobody
no one cares. Yeah.
Like, it makes more sense to appeal to emotion, how someone feels. I would tell people, like, aren't you sick of this bullshit? Like, don't you want something to be different? Like, aren't you sick of, that your future, like, you have no fucking future. Like, you don't, like, that, do something about it. Like, instead of like, well, statistically, like fucking intellectual.
Yeah, people forget that shit. Yeah.
Fuck that. Like, people don't care about that. They don't want to hear it. They've heard it. It's been beaten into your fucking brain.
And no one believes it anymore either.
No.
Like, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, lyrically, like I like to like appeal to emotion more. But there is a politics in it, and there are parts where it's more like there is like sort of more political language, like in the song "Anti-Democracy," "Locust Breath," like. That's a pretty like straightforward political opinion, and that's probably the most straightforward of all of the songs on the record.
Yeah, it does stick out a little bit, that one, like, because we have like a kind of bank of like political words, right? And it's just
right.
like and it's like there's you scan over all the song titles and you just see this one word, democracy, just sticking out there, like
because well, that's the thing, like, you have to appeal to people's emotion, how their feelings, you have to relate on a human level to people through, common struggle, solidarity. But once you've done that, once you have their attention, then you lay down the solution to the struggle, what is to be done. And that's like sort of the line that I was trying to get at, it's like, I don't want to be too overtly, political, but at the same time, there does have to be a political message. So like, how do you present that in a way that isn't like, people aren't just going to say, oh, this is too corny, or this is like, oh, this is just too much. Like, I want to, hear something that's like not preachy, something that I can actually relate to. I don't want to feel like someone is looking down on me, telling me what I need to do.
And that's the problem with like very straight up political lyrics, is that often as well they're very just like cookie cutter, like saying the party line. Like,
oh yeah.
Like it's the smash the system, oi oi oi. Like we've all heard it before.
But okay, well, how and when, why? No, right, yeah. It's too easy just to say smash the system. Like, you kind of have to say like how and why and for what reason. Like, if you're gonna have a real political message of solidarity. Like you have to hit all those lines, and I don't know if not everyone is really capable of that. Like,
No,
you
definitely not.
have talent.
I don't think, the talent is, and the skill, like lyric writing skill is one thing, but I think a lot of the time as well that people just like outsource their thinking, so they're not really, even people like on like, that would agree with your, like, with you about what you believe. A lot of those people are still just outsourcing their thinking and going like, right, what's the party line on this thing? And
Right.
they're not actually critically thinking. And like what you were saying about education, they're not teaching people about history and of politics and stuff. I think that is important, but also furthermore, and to me, the real thing that needs to be taught to children is to think critically about new stimulus and to actually analyze things and go like, what is it about this thing that is making it this way, and what should my appropriate reaction be to everything that we know about it? Because that's the one thing they definitely fucking don't teach you, is to think for yourself. They only teach you to do what you're told.
Imagine what a great experience it would be to, I mean, especially to grow up with an education that did prioritize analytical thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine the kind of world we could build if we actually had an educational system that was like that was properly funded, first of all.
I mean, it's also like it's because like life wants answers to everything now, right? So everyone always feels like if you get asked a question, you're supposed to give an answer to it, and you're supposed to completely understand your own answer immediately. And you're not allowed to sit and go like, "Fuck, what do I think about that?" And sit. And I often come back to people a week later, after they've asked me something, and I'll be like, "So I thought about that thing you said to me, and this is what I think about it," because I've because sometimes it does fucking take that long to realize what you think about something, and that's one thing that I wish people. I think the world would be a lot better if everyone didn't feel like they had to be right about everything all the time.
Of course, I mean, but the system doesn't want philosophers. The system wants subordinate, passive, robotic workers without feelings or thoughts, just to carry on the status quo. I mean, and they'll even put it in your art, like you were just saying, like, the very cookie cutter party line, like, oh, I'm rebelling, but I'm really not rebelling. Maybe I'm rebelling with the music itself. Maybe the music is aggressive and fast or whatever.
But even that's not rebellious.
Still, well, the message is still, status quo, and like you're talking about Zizek. Zizek says it all the time. Ideology works when you don't know that it's working, right? You're participating in it without knowing that you're even participating in it. So even fucking punks, and then it co-ops everything, right? It's even co-opting punks, right? Punks just saying, smash the system, oi, 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 with nothing else behind it. Like that may seem revolutionary now, but it's not. It's just,
and it's also they get to feel like they've done something by writing that bullshit pointless song where they're only preaching to the choir. So then they've done that. It's like, okay, well now I get to sit back and feel like a fucking revolutionary,
Right.
I took down the Nazis with that one.
Yeah. When they're marching in the streets with fucking bats and rifles and chains and clubs and all that and shields and shit, I'm sure they're gonna be really scared of your fucking punk song blasting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Yeah, man. So like and that's another thing like that I was wanting to talk to you about. It's like, your sound has drifted more and more towards and I remember you saying this to me when we first started talking like years ago, that you were wanting to kind of like lean into the sort of death metal side of the sort of grind thing, which is definitely been like a huge thing, which I feel like right now, like is like this sort of death grind thing is like peaking. It's like this huge worldwide thing now, the HM2 thing, and you guys have really like come up with that. So like, what do you think there's a sort of thing about like death metal having sort of political ties to it and stuff, because obviously like death metal, black metal have always been like, well, apart from like Nazi black metal, it's always been a very particularly unpolitical thing.
Well, first of all, I would say the opposite about black metal. I think black metal has always been political. I think it was created to be political. I mean, the fucking dumb chuds like who think the opposite of that, I mean, are just full of shit. I mean, it's just, I mean, you look at its beginning, you know, one of its most famous pioneers, you know, Varg, was burning churches. He was extremely political.
Yeah.
You know, they were, you know, some of them were political without knowing it. I mean, you know, which one stabbed the gay dude to death? You know, you know, all the old stories and shit. Like, that was a political act, you know, like, don't tell me that it wasn't.
But then the music,
the
lyrics would never be.
You know,
that's an argument about separating the artist from the art, because like Varg would never sing about politics or anything ever.
Well, honestly, just singing about traditional, you know, fucking Nordic shit is political, in my opinion. Singing about culture is political. You're making a political statement for your culture, and then his actions backed up those statements. I mean, it's presented in a more poetic, folky way, you know, that isn't overtly political on its face. It's telling stories. Yeah, a lot of black metal is like that. It's still political though. I mean, they can deny it all they want, but it is. And honestly, the fucking Nazi black metal bands, they're the only black metal bands that aren't lying to people. I'm just saying, like, they're just saying it is. They're saying, yeah, this is what it is. This is what it's always been. They're the only ones that aren't liars.
Yeah, that's why I've never ever been able to understand how Marduk have got away with it all these years. Like,
it's just like a joke. It's just like the ultimate evil, or just like ultimate evil, man. You know?
Yeah, but it's like the ultimate like hiding in plain sight, but not hiding.
Right.
And, yeah, like.
And look at the stuff that came out about them. A couple of their members are like members of like far right parties and fucking wherever they're from.
Yeah, I think it's just, like, I think it's because they reached a level of fame before people like a sort of like a level of fame that you can't in what we like modern call out culture, you can't take them down anymore. You know, like there's like a threshold where you can't. But they
because they came up before.
Yeah,
like,
exactly,
internet,
before that,
before social media.
Yeah. So like, you know, they got there where they can't be taken down before all of that shit was happening, and then now it's almost like, well, what are you gonna do about Marduk? Okay. Like,
yeah. Well, that's why, you know, that's why it's gone to like physical threats of their shows, like people threatening to attack their shows, bomb their shows, all that shit. That's a response from the far left saying, well, we can't take them down through any other means but through physical force. So that's what's happening now, and I don't know where the fuck that's gonna go. Like, who knows? Because eventually these bands are gonna keep trying to come back to America and like keep touring and shit, and who knows if the shit will escalate, or maybe it won't. You know, maybe they'll give it up. I don't know. You know, but we have quite an exciting future to look forward to, don't we?
Yeah, man. Right. Well, like, that's basically been an hour, and the recording is about to stop. So yeah, it was awesome chatting to you, bro. Yeah, let's do it again sometime, right?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm down. This was cool.
Yeah, man. Cool. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and yeah, maybe we can talk more about music at some point. Actually, like that would
be cool. Yeah.
All right. Cool, man. Good to see you. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one.